Hello, Algebra 1 students. This is Chapter 1, Section 3, Properties of Numbers. A property is a distinct characteristic. If I asked for some properties about yourself, I'd want to hear some attributes. That's a big word for what is unique. Tell me something unique. That's a property about yourself. What is unique about you? So as we go through these properties, I want you to think of the word unique. What makes each property special? The first property is the reflexive property. And it's simply like looking in a mirror and seeing a reflection. It's the same on both sides. A equals A. The symmetric property looks more like this. If A equals B, whoops, I forgot to write A. If A equals B, then B will also equal A. That is the symmetric property. Now, a lot of people get confused with the symmetric property and the transitive property. The transitive property says, there's an extra step in there. If A equals B, and B equals C, then we can translate that A will also equal C. You may need to take a minute and let that soak in. So symmetric means A equals B. Similarly, B equals A. Similarly, symmetric. Transitive, we're translating that if A is B and B is C, we can then conclude that A is also equal to C. The substitution property says if A equals B, then wherever you see an A, it can be replaced with B and vice versa. So A can replace B, or B can replace A. Okay, if A equals B, then A can replace B, and vice versa. Vice versa. That means it's interchangeable. A can replace B, B can replace A. All right, an identity. What makes an identity? It's a state. An identity is the state of remaining the same. The state of remaining the same. So additive identity. The question is, what can I add to A that it stays the same? We want it to stay A. Well, the only thing you can add to A, and it still be A, is 0. All right? And vice versa, 0 plus A is also A. So whenever it's a number being added to 0, it's the additive identity. What could we multiply times A and still have A? A remain the same, have its identity. The only thing you can multiply times A and still have A is 1. So know that these both of these statements can go either way. 1 times A is A, or A times 1 is A. All right, next we're going to talk about some inverse properties. Inverse means it's reversed, kind of like our classroom. It's reversed in position or order. Us doing the flipped classroom, we're reversing the order. Or even in direction. It's the reverse direction or the reverse order. Okay, so let's start with the additive inverse. If I have A, what is the opposite or the reverse of A? That would be negative A. All right, and it's the additive inverse. So what happens if we add A and its inverse? We're going to end up with 0. The multiplicative inverse, the opposite of multiplication, is division. So if we have A here, then the inverse is going to be 1 over A instead of A over 1. And it's the multiplicative inverse. So we're multiplying, and the opposite of, so when we multiply A times 1 over A, we end up with 1. So notice that the additive inverse ends up with 0. The multiplicative inverse we'll always end up with 1. We're going to practice this with some numbers in class, so just copy these notes and we'll refer back to them as we start working through some problems. All right, this one's fun to say, along with multiplicative inverse. It's the multiplicative property of 0. If it's a property of 0, then 0 needs to be in the operation that's taking place, and it's multiplication. So this is saying any number multiplied times 0 is going to equal 0. That's the multiplicative property of 0. And again, we can give the reverse order of that. 0 times a is also 0. So anytime you're multiplying times 0, whether the 0 is first or last, you're going to end up with 0, and that is called the multiplicative property of 0. All right? Okay, for the next property, I've added a little red sports car. The next one is the commutative property. And the commutative property, when you're talking about multiplication, looks like this. A times B equals B times A. And I draw the car because when I hear the words commute, I think of driving to work. I commute to work, A times B, and then in the evenings I have to commute back home from B. I go back to A, and that's supposed to be just a dot. I'm not sure what's happening. My screen keeps jumping. Okay, and then the same thing with the addition property of commutative, the addition commutative property. I'm trying to clean this up. It's A plus B equals B plus A, the commutative property. That's how you will recognize it. You have it in one order, and then you turn around and give it in the reverse order. I might ask you to talk about these in relation to those first properties we talked about. They are what? Symmetrical. The commutative property is symmetrical. Next, let's talk about the associative property. The associative property of multiplication looks like this. A times B times C equals A times B times C. And you might be saying, wait a minute, Ms. Mitchell, you wrote the exact same thing on both sides. Well, watch this. I'm going to put parentheses to talk about the associative property. Here B is associating with A, and then B is going to associate with C. And as long as the operation is multiplication or addition, then it is legal to associate. So like at the lunch table, if you're sitting with one friend one day and the next day you associate with another friend, that's the associative property. Associative property will always have parentheses. That helps you to recognize that property. Okay, that's the end of our notes. We are going to add numbers to these tomorrow, so stay tuned and have an awesome hump day. All right, see you tomorrow.